People in Peace. It's a title that people have asked me about. And so I feel that as we begin this series, I just want to share with you a little bit about what we mean when we say peace, because there's a lot of ways to look at that word. In our conversations tonight and in the future, we're going to be looking at really the two aspects of peace. The aspect that deals with the inner person, that brings to us tranquility and calmness, so that as individuals we can deal with the challenges of life and enjoy life to its fullest. And the other aspect of peace is social peace. And that's the peace that enables us to live with one another, to practice tolerance, acceptance, to cherish our diversity, and find ways to cooperate with each other to build a better community. So that's kind of where we're talking about peace in this series. And as Anna has pointed out, we have a guest this evening to start us off, Judge Philip Carchman. He is, I pulled up on the website so much information. This guy is a real powerhouse. But for those of you who don't know him, Philip is a graduate of the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania and obtained his law degree from the University of Pennsylvania Law School. He began his judicial career in 1973 when he was appointed to the part-time position of municipal court judge of Princeton Township and Princeton Borough. In 1981, he was appointed to the office of Mercer County prosecutor. In 1986, he was appointed to the Superior Court of New Jersey. In 1997, he was appointed to the Appellate Division. He took a leave of absence from the Appellate Division from 2004 to 2008, during which he was appointed the Administrative Director of Courts. Then he returned to the Appellate Division in 2008, and I understand after trying to retire a few times, he finally fully retired in 2021 from that position. He has also written numerous articles. He's also been a lecturer in many places. He is a well-known and much beloved man. So it is a joy to be here with you today, Philip. We've had a couple of conversations, so I've gotten to know him and hear some of his stories. And I'm sure that this will be not only enlightening, but also entertaining. He is a wonderful person to speak with. And so as we begin our time together, you've served many years and in many positions in the New Jersey judicial system. And so first I want to say thank you for your service to the community and to the state. We appreciate how much you've given to New Jersey and especially to this area. So thank you for that. It's been a long career, but I'm curious, and I imagine others are as well. What started you on this decision to pursue a career in the judicial system?
Well, first of all, when I listened to that introduction, which I thank you for, but I get the feeling this is a guy who can't hold a job. You know?
Oh, that too, but I didn't want to go there.
Going from this place to the next place. Well, I'm going to start at the beginning. Not at my birth, but we'll move a little past that. But I actually grew up in a household where law was part of it. My father was a lawyer, and my father was insistent that I not become a lawyer, and that was driven into me. And he wanted me to go into other professions, and frankly, I didn't have a lot of interest in becoming a lawyer, even though. Probably starting at the age of 10, I became sort of his shadow, and I would follow him. I would go to court with him, and I would sit in the back, and here's this 10-year-old kid and 11-year-old kid sitting, listening to cases, and juries are there wondering who this waif is, and that always sparked my interest, and I was always paying attention to who was sitting a little elevated and sitting on the bench and whatever. But finally, I went through college, and again, my father, he wasn't dogmatic about it, but he really said, you ought to think about something else. So I actually was going into teaching. And finally I said to him in my senior year, I'm going to go to law school. And despite his reservations, I think he was thrilled that was going to be the case. So when you get to law school, the way law school is taught, all you're doing is reading judges' decisions. So you're constantly being exposed to the judiciary, and you're wondering what makes these people think, how do they go through the decision-making process, and you don't learn a lot about that in law school. But after I finished my law school, I actually clerked for a judge. So I was on the inside looking out for the first time, and that's a rare experience and very positive experience, and realized something that was critically important, both in terms of my education, but understanding that judges are human beings, because I was clerking for a human being, and he reacted like a human being to people. And sometimes he reacted positively and sometimes negatively. It never clouded his judgment, but it was enlightening. And that's an important lesson that many lawyers never fully learn or understand. And then, I started my legal career, and I was in the Attorney General's office as a Deputy Attorney General. I had a private practice here in Princeton for a number of years, and then the opportunity came to serve as the municipal court judge here in Princeton, and I was offered the position. I took the position, and I served for 8 years in that role. And that's, they call the municipal court the people's court, because 90% of all litigants in New Jersey only know one court, and it's the municipal court. And being the municipal court judge in Princeton is a rather unique experience, because as you can well imagine, a routine traffic case can morph into something rather dramatic
in Princeton,
when someone from the university brings in charts, and the issue is parking. Did you park overtime? And so you're challenged. Plus, I always suggested that at some level there was a cloud over Princeton that attracted some folks. So that was in and of itself a rather unique experience. And I was practicing, and I had done private practice for 15 years, and it's arduous, and at some point it could be overbearing and whatever. But there was a fight going on between the governor and the state party chair as to who was going to be the county prosecutor. So I received a strange phone call that I was going to be sent a questionnaire, and the governor's office was sending me this questionnaire to fill out to be the county prosecutor. I didn't know the first thing about being the county prosecutor. And I received this phone call, and I will never forget, I filled out the questionnaire, and I started doing a little research. And I received this phone call. I was sitting in my office, which is at 1 Palmer Square, right in the middle of town. And this phone call is from a fellow by the name of Daniel O'Hearn. Daniel O'Hearn was the counsel to the governor, and he was someone who I knew because I had tried a case against him when I was in practice. And he said, the governor is here in Morven. He's not down in Trenton today, and he'd like to speak to you. So I had a client sitting in front of me, and I said to the client, an emergency has come up, and we're going to have to reschedule. So I walked down the street to the governor, and I met with Governor Byrne, and Governor Byrne said to me, I'm having this dispute, and as to who's going to be the prosecutor. He doesn't want you, but I'm the governor. So I'm this naive individual. I don't know what the politics of this situation are. He said, I'm going to nominate you. He said, I'm going to nominate you as prosecutor or judge. I'm not quite sure, but I think it's going to be prosecutor. And I sort of shrugged my shoulders, and I wanted to be a judge. I didn't want to be prosecutor. But he put in my name as prosecutor, and there were all kinds of politics that took place after that. And finally, the Senate confirmed me, and I spent 5 years as the county prosecutor. And by that time, I decided I was not going back to private practice. And now it's a different governor. It was Governor Kane, and his office called and said, we're going to nominate you for a judgeship. And I said, that would be great, and I get nominated. So I'm appointed by a Republican governor. I'm a Democrat, and I get appointed by the Republican governor because New Jersey has this strange tradition of half Democrats, half Republicans in the judiciary. And that started it. And for the next, that was 1986, and until 2021, there I was. And sort of moving through the system. And it was a great experience. I have the rare distinction, I have sat in every judicial position in New Jersey, starting in the municipal court. And a few occasions, I actually was called up to the Supreme Court to sit by designation in the Supreme Court. And I have sat in every case type there is. I sat in juvenile court, I sat in family, civil, criminal, general equity in the appellate division, and it's been quite a run.
Wow.
Yes,
it sounds like you really found a way to live out that passion you seem to have had for judicial work and for the judiciary.
Yeah, and it's a rare opportunity, and I can say honestly, without exception, that I've never had a day in my career when I didn't want to continue to drive to the office. There was one possible exception.
Okay, always one.
I had a case, and I got a tip from one of the newspaper reporters who said to me, you're going to be the front page story. Wow. Now, as prosecutor, the newspapers had a whole file of different pictures of me, and I knew when I was prosecutor whether the story was going to be a good one or a bad one by the picture that they used. There was one picture I looked like a fish, and I knew this was going to be a bad story. So, there used to be these newspaper boxes, and you could drive past, and I drove past the box, and I wasn't on the front page. So I said, I'm going to continue to drive to Trenton, and I drove down to Trenton, and it turns out there was this dispute at the university about housing, and there was a big kerfuffle, and it made the front page. I was on the third page, but I didn't care about the third page. So that was the only day where I had some reservation, because if my picture had been on the front page, I would have turned around and gone home.
Okay.
But other than that, never a day. There were better days than others,
isn't
but
there? Yeah, but
never
still,
a bad
you were passionate about getting there and doing the work. So
yes, absolutely.
That's a real gift to be able to do that. Yeah.
That's the short version.
Yeah. along with that passion, one of the things you mentioned to me a number of times when we've gotten together prior to this is the importance of empathy for a judge. And I'm wondering if you could explain what that is and how you see it, and is it in some way connected to one's personal perspective on things?
That's an issue that has come up a number of times, and I always make the distinction between empathy and sympathy. And there's an important reason. And empathy is feeling with someone and understanding the position that they're in, and that's very important for a judge. Sympathy is feeling for someone.
Okay.
And one of the things that judges have to be cautious with about sympathy is that virtually every experience that you have, every case, there's an element of sympathy that can enter into the process. You're looking at folks who are may not be in the best of a particular position at a given time, and you can feel sympathy for them. But one of the things when we charge juries, when we instruct juries, one of the things that we always tell juries is do not let sympathy enter into your decision-making as you reach a verdict.
Right.
Because every case, every story is going to have some element of sympathy involved. On the flip side, though, empathy is very important. And one of the things that when I was sitting in the appellate division, and when I would lecture lawyers who would be taking a course, and we would be talking about oral argument. And one of the things I would say to the lawyers was, your job is to bring us into the room and let us understand exactly what your client was going through.
That's important.
And that's empathy.
Yeah.
That you understand with the person what is it like being in their shoes. When I was in the trial court, one of the real challenges, actually it was in municipal court as well as the Superior Court. One of the real challenges was understanding the circumstances of the individuals before you. You know, here's this white middle-class guy who has, lived a life but hasn't been exposed to many of the edges. And, I would sit there and I would listen to cases and I would recognize that I do not fully understand all of the circumstances that are being described to me. And I think back to municipal court. One of the important case types in municipal court are drunk driving.
Okay.
And the courts take drunk driving offenses very seriously, and it's a very big issue in New Jersey. So I'm exposed to alcoholism, and I'm exposed to folks getting in trouble with alcohol. My upbringing, alcohol was 4 cups of wine during a Seder. That was
that
was
event.
alcohol.
Right.
But here I am seeing folks in terrible situations, and drunk driving, as I say, is a serious problem. And then I would get these other cases. I'd get assault cases, or I'd get robbery, theft cases, and so forth, heard in the municipal court, and there'd be alcohol involved in it. And I never fully appreciated or understood the circumstances. So, getting to that empathy part was a challenge. And I remember I was discussing this with a colleague of mine from North Jersey, a municipal judge, and he told me what he was doing because we had a common issue together. And he said he called his local AA office.
That's smart.
And he said, you ought to try it and see what happens. So I picked up the phone, and where do you find AA? You go to the phone book, and it's really at the beginning of the...
You're right there.
And I called up AA, and I had this person on the other line, and I said, I identified myself, I'm the municipal court judge, and I'd like to sit down with you and see if we can work out some sort of a program to help me understand and help the various folks who were coming before me. And he said something I never forgotten, and this goes back to probably 1974. He said, we've been waiting for this call for a long time.
Oh, wow.
And what we did was we developed a program whereby I would, if someone came before me with an alcohol issue, I would sentence the individual according to the law, and then I would send them to a meeting, an AA meeting, which was held in the courtroom on Saturday mornings.
Oh, wow.
And we created this program. I think it still exists to this day, probably not in the courtroom because it's been expanded dramatically.
Wow.
And every 5 years or so, I would go to the meeting just to talk and reintroduce myself and so forth. And I would attend these meetings. I would sit in the back, and I once took my daughter, who was 15 years old, with me. And I said, come on, you might find this interesting. We sat in the back, we listened to the stories that were being told, and she said, why is everyone so upbeat? And I said, because this is helping. Yeah. But what it did for me was, it gave me that element of empathy. I understood some of the issues. I still had to abide by the law. I still had to make the same legal determinations. I still had to impose a sentence that was a harsh sentence.
Sure.
But at least I was understanding, and I could understand with rather than simply for.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes such a difference in making a judgment that you were able at least to understand, what the circumstances around that were. Wow, that's powerful, yeah.
Yeah, and the Chief Justice at the time was Richard Hughes, and he had some family members who had some challenges with alcohol, and he called me once and said, "I'm sending you to Chicago to talk about this meeting." And I went to Chicago, and I was in a room with all judges. It was a judicial conference. And I called the AA folks in this town in Illinois, and they came to the meeting. And they opened the meeting, and the classic opening was, "My name is so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic." And about 6 judges responded.
Yeah.
So it was an honor.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I just wanted to note when you were just giving that really powerful story that it's good that this is the audience today. We all know what a phone book is. So when you said you went to the phone book, we all knew what you were talking about.
That's right,
My nephews would have no idea what you were talking about,
Absolutely.
but at least we all know what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So.
I think I still have one, as a doorstop or something.
Somewhere.
No. My wife says, "I don't think she threw it out. I don't have a phone book."
But another important thing is fairness. It's often used in talking about the judicial system and how it's integral to the system. Would you expand on how you view the application of fairness in your years of service?
Well, one of the tenets of the certainly judicial profession is to be fair.
Yeah.
And you work very hard at that. One of the important aspects of that is not only to be fair, but to appear to be fair.
Okay.
And sometimes that becomes a little more of a challenge. I always used to say that, compliments to a judge come fairly cheap, especially for the winners. Everyone tells you how bright you are when they're walking out of the courtroom and they won.
Yeah, right.
So the real compliment you get is when a lawyer contacts you and says, "We lost, but my client felt you were being fair and that you heard what he had to say."
Right.
And to me, that's worth all of the other gratuitous compliments combined.
Yeah, that sense of being heard and seen and heard, but considered some worth even though they didn't get their judgment in their favor. So.
It's probably as important as any part of the legal process and certainly part of the judicial process, that folks feel that they have been heard and that they've had the opportunity to make their case. I think back, I told you a couple of these stories. I think back to a case when I was sitting in the family part, and it was a divorce case. And one of the things we always try to do is settle these cases if we possibly could, which is to everyone's benefit. And we were having a great deal of difficulty settling this case because one of the parties' attorneys said, "My client wants to tell the story." So I said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start the trial." And we started the trial, and the client came out, and it happened to be the wife, and she told her story. And she told it in full. And it was not a happy story, but, she told it with passion and so forth. We went back into chambers after she finished her testimony. We settled the case.
Yeah.
She just wanted to be heard.
Sure.
And, and it applies, when I talk about family law or the family part, it's an issue that comes up, all the time. But you had said to me you were going to ask me about this issue of being heard. And I was reaching back, and I actually brought a copy of a decision that I wrote a number of years ago that was didn't involve an individual. It involved a corporate situation, but the whole issue of being heard was critical, not so much to the decision, but to the way I wrote the opinion. And I'll give you a little bit of background. There is something in this country called the National Judicial College. It's located in Reno, Nevada. It has a building. It has a faculty. It's located on the campus of University of Nevada, Reno. People ask me why it's in Reno, Nevada, and if you know the Fleischman family, gin and yeast, that's where they were from. And they wrote the check to endow this college, so it's in Reno, Nevada. So I was sent out there one year to take a course in opinion writing. And they have a whole myriad of courses and myriad courses to give. It's a wonderful institution. So I went out there, and I remember the instructor. It was an appellate judge from New York by the name of Richard Schwartz. I still remember him. I visualize him. And he told the story of writing an opinion about Symphony Space. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with Symphony Space in New York. And Symphony Space was in a tax. There was a tax issue as to whether it was exempt or not exempt. And he instructed us about writing this opinion, and he said he started the opinion by describing how important Symphony Space was to the community. And then, of course, Symphony Space lost. It was actually reversed in the Court of Appeals.
Later on,
so
but still.
Judge Schwartz, they reversed his
decision.
I'll put, and I apologize, I still have the remnants of a little cold. In any event, so fast forward, we have a case involving an institution known as Muhlenberg Hospital. And Muhlenberg Hospital is in Plainfield, New Jersey, and the Commissioner of Health, a woman by the name of Heather Howard, some of you may know her, she lives in Princeton, is on the faculty at the university now. At the time, she was the Commissioner of Health. She made a decision she was going to close down Muhlenberg Hospital, which she did. And the case comes to the appellate division, and I'm sitting in the appellate division. And we're sitting in Morristown, and the appellate courtroom in Morristown is enormous. It must seat 150 people, which is very unusual, because normally for appellate division arguments, we get about 5 people plus the lawyers. So I walk out with my colleagues out on the bench, and the place is packed. And when I say packed, it is standing room only, and people are in wheelchairs, and they're in all kinds of devices. And the issue is it's a very narrow, distinct legal issue, but they were there for the hospital. And I'm listening to we listened to the case, and the narrow issue we're going to decide is whether the commissioner was correct in closing the hospital. So I was the presiding judge of this panel, and I assigned the opinion to myself, and I said, I'm going to write this. And I went home or went back to Chambers, and I started writing this opinion, and the opinion is probably 60 pages or so. And I thought about Judge Schwartz's advice, and I thought about the fact that we had all of these people there who wanted to be heard. So I said to you, I actually brought a couple of paragraphs, and this is how I opened the opinion. And I started by saying, founded in 1877 in response to a public awareness for the need for a health care facility, the Muhlenberg Hospital was established to serve the city of Plainfield and its environs. Muhlenberg was an important part of the community, not only providing medical care, but generating popular response and financial and volunteer support from its citizen constituents. It inspired unique traditions such as playing of Brahms' lullaby, signaling the birth of a child. It thrived as Plainfield thrived, and its population base expanded. Over the years, Muhlenberg served tens of thousands of residents who looked to it as a critical community resource. In recent years, Muhlenberg faced a new reality. Not unlike other hospitals in New Jersey, its medical, administrative, and maintenance costs spiraled, its physical plant aged, and Plainfield's economic base deteriorated. Soon, Muhlenberg's prime source of revenue was no longer private pay patients, but those on government assistance. Instead of a thriving, fiscally sound institution, Muhlenberg reflected declining admissions and mounting losses. So I go on and write, and we uphold the commissioner's determination. And I concluded at the end with a short paragraph, and I said, the community outpouring in support of Muhlenberg Hospital not only demonstrated the significant impact that the institution had on generations of residents, but the importance of healthcare in the lives of not only healthcare professionals, patients past and present, but also ordinary citizens who recognize the import of a cherished resource. Yet the circumstances that brought these forces together in opposition also reflected the crisis faced by the commissioner in balancing the health of a failing institution with the need to ensure that health care can be provided in a meaningful and orderly process. And when I wrote that last paragraph, all I could think about were those people
there.
And said, you know, they have to know that we heard them.
Yeah.
We saw them.
Yeah, that ties so beautifully with what you were saying earlier about empathy. You know,
Yeah.
you understood, you were able to, you know, as a judge, and to be able for them to look at that and say, okay, we were heard. Because that's what people want. We want to be heard. We want our stories to be recognized by others. So, powerful part. Wow. Give me a new expansion of the work of a judge.
Well, we write. I just gave a talk at the university the other day, and one of the questions I was asked was our workload. I said, just imagine you're writing 4 term papers every week. So they said, oh, really? I said, yeah, that's what that's about.
I appreciate that you did all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, the proceedings in the court are to bring about justice. That's why people go to the court. Would you share with us your experience of seeking to bring about justice when it was difficult? Because I'm sure sometimes when you heard cases, oh, it was easy, this is the case. But other times, I imagine it's a very difficult decision to make and to bring to the plaintiff and the
Sometimes,
defendant.
look, you know, in the various courts that I sat in, with the exception of the Supreme Court, we're bound by Supreme Court decisions. Sure. And sometimes the Supreme Court decision isn't the decision we would reach independently, and we write an opinion that, you know, says we might decide otherwise, but we are bound by this precedent. One of the things that I would do, and I had one particular colleague who would do it with a great deal of delight. He would let the Supreme Court know how he really felt about their opinion.
Oh, okay.
and would invite them to revisit the question, which sometimes they took graciously, and other times they had no use for. But you confront a number of situations where you try and reach the just result, and it's tough. And then sometimes you know what the right answer is. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we always strived for was to really get it right. And I remember one instance, it was my first year as a judge. I heard this case. I was sitting up in Essex County, where I spent a year, my first year on the bench. And it was a small case. It was a landlord-tenant case. Now, my saying it was a small case is really unfair, because to the litigants, it was a big case. And for one of the litigants, it turned out to be a huge case. This was a woman who owned a 2-family apartment building, and she relied on the rent from the second unit to pay the mortgage on the first. And I'm hearing this case, and she is suing this gentleman for rent. And his defense is, I never signed a lease, I never took occupancy of the apartment, And what he did was she prepared a lease, she sent it to him, he sat on it for about 3 months and then walked away from the deal. She is stuck with no rent for 3 months. She can't pay her mortgage. And it was very troublesome. You know, one of the things when a judge is sitting without a jury, you're making determinations about people. And this fellow was he was much too slick, and it was clear that he was playing a game with her, and it was unfair. So I was stuck because we had something in New Jersey at the time called the statute of frauds, and you had to have a writing and so forth. We've got loads of lawyers in this room. Everyone's shaking, yeah, I know what that's all about. And we have some judges here too, which is putting enormous pressure on me. So you know, I'm confronted with this problem. I know what the right answer is. We have to get her this rent. So we had a fellow in the courthouse who was officially retired. He was brought back. He was over 90 years old. He was smart as anyone in the courthouse. He was a Harvard Law graduate. He was a wonderful man. And I called him on the phone. He was sitting as a judge. I called him and I said, you have to help me. Here's my problem. I knew him and was comfortable calling him. Here's my problem. And I explained the facts to him, and he said, Phil, write the opinion. The law will take care of itself. So I wrote this opinion, and the way you get around the statute of frauds is you find partial performance. I mean, this is technical stuff, but I found that the fact that he took the keys at some point means he was performing the lease. And I wrote the decision and walked away from it. This was in July. December, I get this card from this woman, and I'm getting teary-eyed reading this thing that I saved her life. Well, you know, I wasn't saving her life. I was just getting her 3 months rent. But you never fully appreciate, you know, the decisions that you make and the impact until you realize you're dealing with real cases and real people. And when you sit in the trial court, it's much more obvious because you have the bodies before you. I mean, everyone is there. When you sit in the appellate court, you're looking at paper, and that's all you see. Occasionally, you know, the lawyers come in and argue. Occasionally, a client will show up, but for the most part, you're looking at names. So you have to make sure that you recognize and keep remembering, because all judges know this. These are real cases, real people.
Yeah, that's so important, because I imagine, you know, with all those cases you hear, it'd be kind of easy sometimes just to hear and keep going. But as you pointed out, you know, for a case such as that, it may seem like a small case in the larger picture of all that goes on, but yet for that woman, it was really
it's a lesson. Livelihood. It's a lesson that judges learn, that everything you say and do, lawyers hang on every word, and litigants want to know what the result is, and they want to feel that they were treated fairly.
That's so important. Okay. I'm going to switch gears a little bit because we're getting on time here. Since these conversations that we're having in this series are titled People and Peace, I feel that we should try and see how your service as a judge and the whole judicial system can further individual and societal peace. So this being the 21st century, I sought out the wisdom of AI. Okay. My first attempt, okay? And here is what AI presented as the relationship between justice and peace. The judicial system promotes peace by providing a structural, impartial mechanism for the resolving of disputes and upholding the rule of law. It offers a peaceful alternative to violence, ensures accountability for wrongdoing, and contributes to a stable and just society, which are all crucial for long-term peace. Having served as a judge for all those years, how did AI do?
AI did well. Of course, if you add, I have this vision of AI as a bunch of little people, because if you go to AI and ask the next,
always be different.
if you ask the same question, you're going to get a different answer. AI, nailed it. And one of the stories I've told many times, I have a good friend who is in a different profession, not that thrilled with courts and whatever, as many citizens are or are not. And I've said to him, look, here's the alternative. Someone is dissatisfied with your service. The alternative is they can show up at your house with a loaded weapon and, express their displeasure in that way. We stand, in the way of that, if you will. If that's poorly phrased. We don't stand in the way. We are the alternative. And the system of justice, depends so much on what we've been talking about, people having a place to resolve their differences in a system where you do it peacefully, without resorting to arms, and where you lawyers fight and litigate, and that's the way our system is built. And litigants can walk away happy or unhappy, but they walk away standing erect, and they haven't been beaten to the ground. Right. So is our system of justice perfect? Absolutely not. I mean, there are so many areas of room for improvement, but by the same token, we do the best we can. We have in the United States, we have the best system of justice in the world. In the state of New Jersey, all of you here should be proud. We have the finest state judiciary in the country, bar none. I'm sorry, Delaware, but it's New Jersey.
It's okay.
And the judges in New Jersey, if you look at our history starts in 1947 with the new Constitution. We have had, for all intents and purposes, there have been a few blips, a scandal-free judiciary for the past 75 years.
Yeah, amazing.
And you read stories about what happens in Pennsylvania and what happens in Texas and what happens with judges rebelling and so forth and so on. It doesn't happen in New Jersey. And judges, one of the great failings, I think, of the judiciary is to make the public understand how hard judges work. And I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about my colleagues who are sitting out there and those who are presently on the bench. I mean, it's an enormous task, an enormous responsibility, and with very few exceptions, they really take it seriously and try and achieve the right result however they get there. I know there's one story you want me to tell, so you want me to tell it?
Sure, yeah. There's, I had, as you know, we've spoken before, and I gathered from our conversations that family court was something that was very, a big part of not only of your career, but also something that really touched you. And you've shared a story with me that I think would be helpful for every one of us to hear.
Yeah, by the way, I was on the bench for 40 some odd years. I spent 3 years, 9 months, 1 day in family.
Yeah.
It was actually a small chronological piece, but it was an important piece. So I was telling Conrad this story because it really impacted me. It's a story that happened many years ago, but I have never forgotten it. I can visualize it. In the family court, you hear a type of case called families in crisis. So in walks this grandmother who is dressed to the nines. I mean, the folks are out of Trenton. She is dressed as elegantly as I can imagine because she's in court. That's the reason she's dressed up. Yeah. And in walks her grandson, and the dispute is between the grandson and the grandmother, and the grandmother is complaining. He's surly, he comes home late, he won't answer my questions, he's disruptive and so forth, and I just don't know what to do. Well, there was not a lot I could do, and we had social worker there and try to help. Move on, next case. One of the other case types you hear in family are called non-dissolution cases. And these are cases involving support for children of parents who were not married. So this is 6 months later. I get this case. The name doesn't mean a thing to me. In walks someone from the welfare department, because they're moving this case, and this young man, same young man. And tell me about this case. Well, what I learn is that, yes, he was staying out late, and yes, he was not responding to his grandmother, and yes, he wasn't around for dinner all the time because he was in high school. He would then go to his job at McDonald's or something like that. He would then go to the hospital to see his girlfriend and see a child who was born with a limited brain stem. And he was there, I even get emotional about it, thinking about it. He was there every day, every night rather, to support. And I said to him, why didn't you tell me? He had no good answer. And, you know, I had an impression of him on day one, of this surly, non-communicative kid. And on day two, 6 months later, you know, this hero.
Yeah, I think one of the powerful things I find in that story is that we need to hear stories of people. I mean, it's so easy for us to base our opinions about people on just such a limited bit of knowledge. And it's so important for us to hear the larger story and the context in which that appears. So I think thank you for sharing that again. And I could keep going on because I love talking with you, but we are nearing time, and we did say we would have some opportunities for those of you who have come out this evening to ask any questions that you might have. So if anyone has a question, just raise your hand or something.
I've got one. I don't know a lot about the justice system, but it seems like as you ascend each level of the system, there are a number of judges that decide on to make these decisions. Is there some formula that says how many judges you need to render a verdict at a given level, all the way up to the Supreme Court?
You mean how many judges are allocated?
Yeah, how to make that decision about how many people should be allocated to make that?
Well, the Constitution does a good job at the top because there are 7 Supreme Court justices. Once you get below that, it's up to the court and the legislature. And the legislature creates the number of judgeships that are necessary. There are roughly 420 or 430 at the trial level. There are 32 allocated at the appellate level and 7 below, 7 above rather. But the method of allocation, once you get past the Supreme Court, is done by the administrative office of the courts, but under the direction of the Supreme Court. So there are formulas, and there are, they know caseloads and a whole bunch of things. So that's how it's done.
Question.
Yes, sir. Do you feel there should be either term limits or age limits at the Supreme Court level?
That I could be happier with. Let me tell you the Jersey experience. We have a mandatory retirement at age 70, which is probably a little bit too young, and that's now before the legislature will require a constitutional amendment. Although when I turned 70, I said 70 is the new 70. 70 is 70. So I'm not, we've had Supreme Court justices stay much too long, and one of the classic examples is William Douglas, who they literally had to pry off the bench, and he was not really functioning at all. So I think that's something that might be explored. But that's going to require a constitutional amendment, so you're not going to see that in the near future. But age limits, have their place. Although, more and more Supreme Court justices are retiring a little earlier than they used to.
Yeah. Is there any way of time for one more? If there's no other questions and we're nearing the end of our time, then I have one last question for you.
Bye-bye. Let's see.
You have made it, I think, clear to me, and I believe to many others here, how much work you as a judge and all the other judges in this room are doing, and how much it takes, for you personally. So with all of that, in your work as a judge and your service to the community, what did you find that was able to, like some self-care for you? What did you find that you could do that brought some peace to yourself internally so that you could get up the next day and carry on?
It's an interesting question. I sort of anticipated you were going to ask that. Probably going home at night and hugging my kids, especially when I was sitting in family. Although I do tell the classic story that, I would go home and I'd walk into the house and my wife, who's here, might have a complaint or two that's something I failed to do. My kids might be complaining about something, but we had this fabulous golden retriever, and I would stand at the door, and I would get this big tongue waving, and so that may be the answer. Get a golden retriever if you want to be a judge. That's all.
It's a great story, and a way for all of us to find that unconditional love we all need. And I'm glad you found some way.
That was it.
Applied home to do some self-care, because you did a great service as others have done, and I know we all appreciate it. And thank you so much for sharing with us this afternoon. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.